You spend enough time in the service industry, and you stop being surprised by the kind of people who walk through the door after midnight. You stop flinching when someone comes in with blood on their knuckles, or walks straight to a booth and sits there, staring at nothing for 2 hours. You stop asking questions, because the answers are never what you want to hear. I've worked overnights at Grady's Diner for almost 5 years. Not many people can handle it. The isolation, the weirdos, the way the air feels different after 2 a.m. Like the whole world is holding its breath. But I liked it. It was quiet, and I didn't mind working alone. The other servers always swapped shifts to avoid the late hours. Me? I preferred them. Grady's is the kind of place that hasn't changed since 1971. We still have the red vinyl booths, a jukebox that barely works, and laminated menus that smell like old ketchup and fryer oil. We're open 24 hours, 7 days a week. The kind of place that truckers stop in the middle of the night, where cops drink their coffee black, and nurses come after a double shift to inhale pancakes and cry silently. My shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights are uneventful. I refill coffee, clean the same spot on the counter 5 times, and listen to the fridge hum behind the wall. Sometimes a drunk couple comes in from the bowling alley. Sometimes an exhausted dad with a screaming baby. Nothing I couldn't handle. But last Tuesday still plays in my head on a loop. It started like any other night. I came in around 9:50, tied on my apron and counted the till. There was no one in the diner except Dale, the cook who was already working on some leftover meatloaf for himself. Dale's been there longer than anyone. He's a big guy with a permanent scowl and a tattoo of a skull on his forearm that he swears he got in prison. I never asked for details. "Slow night," he muttered, picking at his food with a plastic fork. "Yeah, quiet's good," I replied. "Any heads up I should know about?" He just grunted and went back to chewing. First customer walked in around 11:10. A woman in her mid-30s, business casual, looked exhausted. She sat at the bar, ordered black coffee and a grilled cheese, and stared at her phone the whole time. She left a $10 tip on a $6 tab, and left without saying a word. Normal. Second one came in at 12:17. A man in his 50s, smelled like diesel fuel and sweat, sat in the booth near the back, ordered eggs and toast, and kept muttering to himself between bites. Nothing aggressive, just a guy who maybe hadn't talked to anyone in a while. Then, at 1:03, the door creaked open again. A tall man came in, thin but not lanky, neatly dressed in a gray button-up tucked into dark jeans, clean-shaven. His hands were tucked in his coat pockets, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't say a word at first, just walked slowly to the booth closest to the front window and sat down, staring outside like he was waiting for someone. I gave him a minute before approaching. "Evening. Coffee to start?" He looked up at me, and something about his eyes just made my stomach clench. Not fear, not even suspicion, just something off. Like he was absent in a way that couldn't be explained by sleep deprivation. "Yeah," he said eventually. "Coffee's good." "Anything to eat?" "Not yet." I poured his coffee and left him alone. The diner was dead silent for a while. The muttering guy in the back had left. Dale was in the kitchen, probably asleep on a stool. I was about to wipe down some menus when I noticed the man had pulled something from his coat and placed it on the table. A photograph. It was small, worn around the edges, but I could see it from where I stood behind the counter. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, smiling in a sunlit backyard, holding a stuffed rabbit in one arm. I didn't want to intrude, but something about the stillness of it made my skin crawl. He hadn't touched his coffee. I went over again. "Need a warm-up?" He didn't look up. "She used to come here with her mother." I blinked. "Oh." He nodded slowly. Back in 2016, her mom used to order strawberry pancakes. The girl liked chocolate milk. "You ever see them?" I was caught off guard. I'd only started working nights in 2018, so no, I hadn't. "I don't think so," I said. "But it sounds like something I'd remember." His eyes flicked toward mine. They disappeared March 14th, 2016. Just up and vanished on their way home. No wreck, no credit card activity, no leads. I didn't know what to say. It wasn't unusual for sad people to talk about personal things at 1 a.m., but the way he said it, with complete calm, made me feel like I'd stepped into something I shouldn't have. "I'm sorry," I said. He finally sipped his coffee. "She liked this place," he said, then fell silent again. I nodded awkwardly and walked away. That's when I noticed the white van parked outside. I hadn't heard it pull up, but there it was, idling by the curb, with its headlights off. At 1:26, 2 more men walked in. They were dressed in almost identical clothes. Jeans, black boots, dark jackets, no logos, no patterns. Both were tall and broad shoulders, with cropped hair, military maybe, or something like it. They scanned the room immediately and walked straight to the man at the front booth. He didn't react. One of them sat across from him. The other stood, arms crossed. He said this place would be empty, the standing one said. "It was," the man replied. "Till now." They all looked at me. I tried to act normal, just a waitress wiping down menus, but my heart was beating like a drum in my throat. The seated man leaned in toward the first. "You didn't tell us about the girl." "She's not here," the first man said. "Not anymore." That set off alarm bells in my brain. What girl? What was going on? I backed into the kitchen and found Dale halfway through a cigarette by the back door. "Dale," I whispered, "there's some guys out front. I think something's going down. I don't know what, but it's weird." He looked at me annoyed. "What are you talking about?" I started to explain, but then a loud thud echoed from the front diner, followed by yelling. I rushed back out and saw the first man pinning one of the others against the window, a steak knife in his hand. "Where is she?" he roared. The other guy shoved him off hard, sending him crashing into a booth. Dishes shattered, coffee splashed across the vinyl seat. The third man stepped between them, trying to calm it down, but it was like watching a pot boil over. I fumbled for the phone and dialed 911, but before I could even press call, the man in the gray shirt looked right at me. "Don't," he said, calm, cold, like a threat, but without volume. "Don't call anyone. You weren't here and none of this happened." Then he turned and walked out. The other 2 followed. By the time I got outside, the van was gone. Cops showed up 20 minutes later. I told them everything. They took notes, asked for descriptions, and promised to follow up. But of course, no one ever did. I even checked missing person records, March 14th, 2016, and sure enough, there was a woman and her daughter who vanished on their way home from a birthday party. No suspects, no evidence, just gone. To this day, I don't know who those men were. Law enforcement, vigilantes, traffickers, or just a grieving father who snapped. All I know is after that night, I stopped working in the graveyard shift, because sometimes what keeps you up at night isn't ghosts or monsters. It's the fact that someone might walk into your little diner at 1 a.m. looking calm and polite, and behind those eyes is a story you never want to hear, and they'll tell it to you anyway. I never thought I'd spend 6 years working at a place like Miller's Diner, let alone build my life around it. But you know how it goes. You take a job to get you through a rough patch, and the rough patch just never ends. Miller's was a squat, little silver-paneled joint wedged between a junkyard and an abandoned strip of mall off Highway 73. We were open from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. Most of our customers were regulars, the same old-timers who'd come in for coffee at dawn, the same night shift guys grabbing burgers and fries at 11:45. It was the kind of place people didn't talk about unless it was closing, which it never did. I started there as a dishwasher and worked my way up to assistant manager, mostly by outlasting everyone else. People came and went. Cooks, servers, even the owner's nephew quit after one night. But the one person who never left, who never even took a sick day, was Vic, our head cook. Vic had been there longer than anyone, even the sign out front. He was in his late 50s with thick gray hair pulled into a ponytail and eyes like chipped flint. He didn't talk much, and when he did, it was usually to ask for more onions or grumble about the fryers. Everyone just accepted that he was part of the place, like the grease on the ceiling tiles or the smell of bacon in the walls. I didn't know where he lived. None of us did. Didn't matter. Until it did. It started with a phone call. Saturday morning around 10 a.m., I was doing inventory in the back when the host handed me the cordless. There's a guy on the phone asking about Vic. I raised an eyebrow. What about him? He said it's urgent. Wouldn't give his name. I took the phone. "Yeah, this is Miller's. Vic still working here?" His voice was flat. Not threatening, just intense. "Who's asking?" A pause. "I used to know him a long time ago. Still go by Vic?" I hesitated. "Look, man, I'm not going to give out info on employees. Just tell him Earl's back in town." Click. That was it. I stood there for a minute, staring at the dead phone in my hand, wondering what that was about. I considered mentioning it to Vic, but something stopped me. Maybe it was how quiet the kitchen was, or how Vic hadn't looked up when I walked in earlier. I told myself it was nothing, but then Monday came, and the next weird thing happened. I showed up at 5:45 a.m. for the opening shift, and found the back door ajar. Nothing else looked disturbed, just the metal door hanging half open, a draft blowing in from the alley. I went inside, turned on the lights, and found Vic already at the grill. "Door was open," I said casually. He didn't look up. "Was it?" "Yeah, you leave it that way?" "Nope." He flipped a burger and didn't say anything else. I watched him for a second. "You okay?" He finally met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd known him, Vic looked scared. Just for a second, then it vanished. "You're just tired," he muttered. But something had changed. I could feel it in the way he moved, like he was expecting something to happen, like he was listening to sounds that hadn't come yet. That afternoon, I caught him going through the trash behind the diner, not throwing stuff out, looking for something, digging through bags with his bare hands, head swiveling like a stray dog. "Vic, what are you doing?" He jumped. I just thought I tossed something by accident." "Man, you need help?" He shook his head and walked past me without another word. Then Wednesday came. It was just after closing, a little after midnight. Vic and I were the last ones there. I was counting down the till. He was in the back, doing his usual deep clean. We were running late, later than usual. I kept thinking about how quiet the night felt, like the outside world had disappeared. Then I heard the back door open. Not a knock, just the latch clicking. I walked back and found Vic standing in the hallway, staring at the door. On the floor was an envelope. No writing, no markings, just sitting there, like someone had left it for us to find. Vic didn't touch it, but I did. Inside were 3 photographs, all of Vic, but not from the diner. These were older, grainier. One was him standing next to a red pickup truck in what looked like Arizona. Another was him in a military uniform. The last was him holding a shotgun in front of a burned-down building. I looked up at him. He was pale and breathing hard. "Vic, what is this?" He didn't answer, just turned around and walked back to the kitchen and locked the door behind him. I knocked. "Vic, come on, man, talk to me." No response. After 10 minutes, I called the owner, but he didn't answer. I debated calling the cops, but what would I even say? "Hey, my cook got a weird envelope and now he's hiding in the freezer." So I waited. Eventually, Vic came out, grabbed his coat, and left without a word. The next morning, he didn't show up. Neither the next day. I figured he'd quit, but that night I got a call. Blocked number. I answered. "Hello?" Familiar voice. Vic said, "You need to get rid of the envelope. Burn it, forget it." "Where are you?" "I never meant for it to catch up to me," he said. "Tell Earl I'm not coming back." "Who is Earl?" And silence. Then he said one last thing before hanging up. "Some people can't let go of the past. Some people bring it with them. Some people bury it. But it always finds a way back." I did some digging. Turns out there was a guy who looked like Vic on an old FBI wanted list under a different name. Former military, went off grid after a botched weapons theft. 2 dead, disappeared in 1994. No trace since, until now. I gave everything I had, the envelope, the photos, to a buddy I knew in local law enforcement. He said the prints matched. The wanted had been cooking eggs and pancakes at our diner for the last 12 years under a fake social security number. But by the time the feds showed up, Vic was long gone. They never found him. Sometimes I wonder where he went, if he ever really stopped running, if he ever had peace. Sometimes I wonder how many more like him are out there, tucked behind grills, pushing mop buckets, pouring coffee. People who've buried whole lives under someone else's name, hoping no one ever comes knocking. But someone always does. And now I check the back door every night before locking up. because you never really know who's behind the grill. You spend enough years in the graveyard shift at Roadside Diner, and you start to think you've seen everything. Junkies nodding off in the booths, fights between exes in the parking lot. Even a guy once tried to sell a bloodstained mattress out of his trunk at 3 a.m. So when I saw the first graffiti on the back wall, I didn't think much of it. Probably kids, bored, drunk, high, or all three. It was a Wednesday morning around 5:30 a.m., just before the sun came up. I was taking the trash out, and there it was, sprayed in red paint across the cinder block behind the kitchen. "We see you." Big, drippy, uneven letters. I stood there for a second, staring at it. Not your typical tag. No signature, no symbol, not even profanity. Just those 3 words. Not "we see you pigs" or "we see you government." Just you, singular. I figured it was a prank. Still, I let the owner know. Tony came in around 8 a.m. and said he'd have one of his guys paint over it by tomorrow. I nodded, threw out the trash, and went back to slinging eggs and refilling coffee. But the next morning, it was back. This time in black paint. Same spot, same font, same words. "We see you." Only this time there was something else underneath, smaller. "Don't stay late." Now I was unsettled. It wasn't just kids tagging the wall. Whoever was doing it was coming back on purpose, and now it was a message to us. I brought it up to Tony again. He scratched the back of his neck and sighed. "Probably the tweakers from the trailer park down the highway. I'll put up a camera." But he didn't. Not then. Instead, he had the bus boy spray over it again, and by that night, it was like nothing had happened, except I couldn't stop thinking about it. Don't stay late. Late was literally my shift. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 nights a week. I didn't not stay late. I was late. Night 3, the message was on the windows, not the wall this time. The front windows sprayed in white paint like it was a Christmas decoration, only it wasn't snowflakes or Merry Christmas. It just said, "We see what you did." I froze when I saw it. I just turned on the lights at 9:55, and there it was, staring at me from the dark glass. I checked the parking lot, and it was empty. I checked the roof. Nothing. I even did a lap around the building with the manager's flashlight. Didn't see or hear anyone. At this point, I was done brushing it off. I called Tony and woke him up. "You need to call the cops." He grumbled, told me to chill out, said he'd come by in the morning. Probably just some ex-employee messing around. He wasn't taking it seriously. But I started locking the doors at night, even before customers left, and I started carrying a pocket knife in my apron. 2 days later, the messages stopped being vague. It was Friday night, busy but manageable. The usual drunk guys from the bowling alley, a lonely-looking woman reading a paperback at the counter, and a tired trucker finishing up his second plate of meatloaf. Then, at 1:12 a.m., I got a call on the landline. The one we barely used except for supplier calls. "Hello?" I said. There was a pause. Then a voice I didn't recognize whispered, "Table 4 has 10 minutes. Click. I looked around. Table 4 was the trucker. He was just finishing his soda. 10 minutes for what? Was it a prank? I walked over, refilled his drink, and tried to play it cool. "Everything good?" "Yup," he said, nodding. I let him be, went back behind the counter and stared at the clock. 10 minutes came and went, and nothing happened. Then the power went out. Only for a second, 2, maybe 3, but enough to turn everything black. Coffee machine groaned, fridge stopped humming. Then the lights snapped back on. The trucker was standing now, looking around nervously. "You guys do that often?" he asked. "No," I said. We checked the breaker panel. Nothing tripped. Tony said it was probably the wind, but there wasn't wind. It was dead still outside. The final straw came Sunday. We opened the diner at 6 a.m. like always. I was just finishing the shift, tired, ready to go home. I stepped outside to smoke and nearly stepped on something on the doorstep. A dead bird. No blood, no obvious injury, just dead. Placed neatly in front of the door like a gift. Tapped to its foot was a folded napkin. I opened it. Written in smeared red ink, "You should have left when we warned you." Tony finally installed the camera that day, and for one full night, nothing happened. I thought maybe we'd scared them off, But when Tony went to review the footage the next morning, he found the camera had been spray painted over. A perfect black circle right at the lens, sometime around 2 a.m. And when we walked around to the back wall, the message was there again, bigger and bolder. Now, we come inside. Tony wanted to close for a few nights. I wanted to quit outright, but we couldn't. The diner had bills, staff, reputation, so I did the only thing I could. That night, I stayed late, locked the doors, sat at the counter with a thermos of coffee and my phone camera open, waiting. Nothing happened until 3:17 a.m. That's when I heard the door to the supply closet open from the inside. I hadn't even known there was a lock on the inside. I grabbed my flashlight and my knife and crept toward the back hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. I was sure I was going to find someone standing there. But when I opened the door, it was empty, except for the wall where someone had written in black permanent marker, "Next time, we don't knock." That was 3 months ago. Tony installed security systems, hired an overnight guard for 2 weeks. Nothing since. But every time I open, I check every wall, every closet, every reflection, because someone was, or still is, watching the diner, and they're waiting. Not for attention, not for fame, just for the right time. And that time might be any night now. Maybe even tonight. There's something about diners that attracts weirdness. Maybe it's the harsh lighting against the dark windows, or the way time seems to stretch between coffee refills and the sound of sizzling bacon. It's like the real world thins out after 1 a.m., and anything or anyone might walk through the door. I've worked overnights at Benny's Diner for the past 4 years. It's the kind of place that sits alone on a stretch of Route 41, where there's nothing for miles, just road darkness and desert air that never quite cools down. We get the occasional trucker, the occasional college kid from the next town over, but mostly it's just quiet, except for the cat. No one knows when it started showing up. One day it was just there, sitting right outside the front door on the concrete slab, just at the edge of the parking lot light. A short-haired black cat with pale green eyes that didn't reflect light, not the way normal animal eyes do. It would just sit there, staring, never moved, never begged for food, never left tracks, just stared through the glass like it was waiting to be invited in. We started calling it midnight. Seemed cute at first. Customers even joked about it. "Oh, your little mascot's back." But midnight never blinked, never flinched, and it was always there. Rain, wind, thunderstorms. Even during the heat wave last July when the pavement was hot enough to fry an egg, it sat in that same spot, watching. And then, the weird things started happening. The first time I really felt off is when I was closing up one night around 3:45 a.m. The last customer had left. I was sweeping the front, and I turned off the main lights, just leaving the open 24-hour sign buzzing red in the window. I looked outside, and the cat wasn't sitting in its usual spot. It was closer, right at the door, just inches from the glass, staring up at me. I jumped, but when I looked again, it hadn't moved, still as a statue. I unlocked the door and stepped outside. "Shoo," I said, half laughing. It didn't run, didn't even flinch, just turned its head slowly to follow me as I walked around it. I didn't see it move, not once, just turned, locked eyes, then looked back at the door like it belonged inside. I went home that morning, feeling like someone had poured cold water down my spine. 2 days later, a regular, Ronnie, old guy who came in every morning at 6 a.m. for black coffee and scrambled eggs, came in with a bloody bandage on his hand. "What happened?" I asked. "Cat outside bit me." My stomach dropped. "Midnight? That cat bit you?" "Don't know what you call it. Came out of nowhere. I just stepped over it and bam, clamped down like it was protecting the porch. Didn't even run after." I ordered him a free coffee. Told him to get it checked out, but he waved me off. "I'll be fine, just a scratch." Ronnie didn't come in the next day, or the day after that. When I finally asked about him, someone said he'd been taken to the hospital with a high fever, delirium, infections. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. Said he kept mumbling about green eyes in the dark. Midnight kept showing up, always sitting there in the same spot. We tried feeding it, but it wouldn't touch the food. Tried calling animal control, but by the time they got there, the cat would be gone, vanish like smoke. Once a new guy named Dylan, who just started bussing tables, decided to mess with it. He grabbed a broom and banged it near the door, trying to scare it off. He went out for a smoke after his shift and never came back. We found his car key still on the counter, his bag in the break room. Police said they saw signs he walked off into the desert, no footprints after a certain point. They asked if he was suicidal. He wasn't. We talked. He'd just gotten promoted and had plans. The next night, the cat was back, sitting in the same place, licking its paw slowly, staring through the glass. I started to feel like I was losing it. I didn't see its reflection in the windows that didn't face outside, catch its shape in the chrome of the milkshake machine, hear soft scratching noises under the floor near the freezer, like claws on tile. And the dreams. I didn't dream much, never have, but lately I started seeing that cat in my sleep. Only it was bigger, human-sized, still shaped like a cat, but with 2 long limbs, like it was stretching into something else. Its green eyes would glow in the dark, and it would sit at the foot of my bed, whispering things I couldn't understand. I stopped sleeping. I started drinking more coffee. I stopped taking out the trash at night. Then came the night the power went out. It was just me and another server, Tina, working the overnight. A windstorm was whipping up outside, and we were already talking about closing early when everything went black. The open sign went out. The grill hissed. The fans died. Tina went to check the breaker box. I went to the front, flashlight in hand, and there, pressed against the glass, was the cat. But it wasn't alone. There were 3 of them now, all identical. Black coats, green eyes, sitting shoulder to shoulder, perfectly still, watching. I backed away. Something knocked on the glass. Not like a cat paw, like a fist. Then another knock, louder, followed by a low scraping, like nails dragging across the glass in slow, deliberate arcs. I ran to the kitchen and found Tina staring at the back door. There was a sound behind it, something pacing. We locked both doors, turned every light on as soon as the power came back, and the cats were gone. We told everything. Our manager laughed it off. He came in for a rare overnight to prove we were being dramatic. He found one of the cats in the walk-in freezer. Inside, door still locked. No sign of entry. It didn't run, just sat there, watching him with its head tilted. He quit the next day, with no notice. These days, the cat's still out there. Never more than one at a time now. Always just watching. Some customers won't sit near the window. Some don't come anymore at all. Animal control says there's no record of catching or seeing anything near our address. No missing cat reports, no tracks, nothing. It just shows up, night after night, waiting. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see those green eyes still, not blinking, not looking away, like it's learning. And I wonder, not what it is, but how long it's been waiting to come inside. If you've ever worked overnights at a 24-hour diner, you learn fast that every shift has its ghosts, not the supernatural kind, but the people who haunt the same tables, the same stools night after night, like they've nowhere else to go. I've gotten used to most of them, the tweakers who babble to themselves over empty mugs, the ex-trucker with the oxygen tank who always reeked of diesel and regret, even the woman who stole sweetener packets by the handful and thought no one noticed, but none of them unsettled me the way he did. We didn't even know his name. He never offered it. He never spoke unless it was to order, and even then, he used the fewest words possible. Coffee, black, toast, dry, bacon, crispy. We just called him Booth 9, because that's where he always sat. Corner booth furthest from the entrance, half shaded by the broken jukebox, and under the one flickering fluorescent light we never got around to fixing. He came in every night, between 1 and 1:10 a.m., like clockwork, sat in the same position, back to the wall, hands folded neatly on the table, staring straight ahead. Not at anything, not at anyone, just ahead. He wore the same thing every night. An old tan trench coat, threadbare at the cuffs, a black, wide-brimmed hat that he never took off, and wire-frame glasses with one lens missing. His eyes, or rather, the one I could see, were pale and cloudy, like someone who'd been blind for years. But he wasn't blind, because he watched everything. Every move I made, every refilled cup, every trip to the register, I'd feel his gaze following me, that one eye locked in, like he was memorizing everything I did. Every time I passed his booth, he'd tilt his head ever so slightly, just enough to make sure I knew he saw me, but never enough to say hello, never enough to be mistaken for friendly. The first few nights I worked graveyard, I thought maybe he was harmless, just one of those quiet, off-kilter loners who found comfort in routine. The world doesn't have a lot of places left for people like that, but something about him started to wear on me. Little things, like how he never ate more than 2 bites of anything. He'd order bacon and toast every night, and always leave most of it untouched, arranged strangely on the plate. Once I realized he'd started folding the toast in half and stacking the bacon inside like a crude sandwich, but never taking a bite, just leaving it there. And there was his notebook. He kept it in the inner pocket of his coat. Black leather, no markings. I saw it the 3rd week I was on the shift. He took it out one night, flipped to the middle, and started writing. Not just jotting things down, writing fast, almost frantic, like he was transcribing something from memory that he couldn't afford to forget. Page after page, pen scratching across the paper in a frenzy. When I walked by, he covered it with his arm. I told my manager Ruby about him. She just rolled her eyes. Yeah, that's booth 9. Been coming here longer than I've worked here. Creeps me out too, but he tips well. He ever talk to you? She hesitated. Once back in 21, he asked me what time I usually left the building. I said around 6:15. Next night, he handed me a folded paper and told me not to read it until I got home. She looked me dead in the eyes. Directions to a storage unit in Bakersfield. No explanation, just a key taped to the bottom and a map. Did you go? She shook her head, threw it in the trash. Next night, he acted like it never happened. 2 months in, I started noticing the patterns. Every night he'd sit in silence for an hour. Then, at exactly 2:07 a.m., he would get up, leave a $5 bill on the table, even if the check was $6 or $9, and walk to the restroom. He stayed there for 6 minutes every time, then left. Never once spoke another word after ordering. Never once looked at his phone. Never once came on a holiday. I started watching the clock. 2:07 bathroom. 2:13 door opens. Gone. Every time. Until the night it changed. It was a Thursday. We were short-staffed. Cooks were behind. A drunk guy had vomited by the register, and I was trying to clean up the mess when I noticed booth 9 was late. It was 1:22 a.m. and no sign of him. Part of me was relieved. Maybe he'd finally moved on. Maybe he was in the hospital or dead. Then the door opened at 1:28 and he walked in. But something was different. He wasn't wearing the coat, just a faded undershirt and pants. His hands were wrapped in gauze, stained with something dark. His hat was missing. His hair, stingy, gray, and unwashed, hung to his shoulders, and his eye, the one that always stared, was swollen shut. He sat in booth 9. Didn't order, didn't speak, just stared at the opposite wall. I approached carefully. You okay? Nothing. Want your usual? Still nothing. I left him be. I had customers to deal with after all. At 2:07 he stood up, walked to the bathroom, and never came out. After 10 minutes I knocked. Sir? Everything all right in there? No answer. 15 minutes. 20. Ruby told me to unlock the door. I used the manager's key. The bathroom was empty. No window, no back door, nothing. Just the mirror, the sink, and one single thing left behind on the floor. His notebook. I didn't want to open it, but I did. The pages were filled with names, hundreds of them, scrawled in tight handwriting, No last names, just first names, and dates beside each. Most of the dates were decades old, some from the 80s, the 70s, even one from 1955. But then I saw something that made my mouth go dry. My name, Kara, written near the bottom of a page, next to a date, tomorrow's. I dropped the book and called the cops. They came, took statements, asked questions, and took the notebook, searched the cameras. Footage showed him walking into the bathroom, never showed him coming out. They said maybe the footage glitched, maybe he slipped out somehow in the chaos, but no one saw him again. That was 3 months ago. My name still burned into my memory, how it looked written in his hand, like it had been written long before he'd ever met me. I quit 2 weeks later. Found work at a cafe across town, one that closes at 8 p.m. sharp. I never go anywhere near diners past midnight, but sometimes, when I walk home after a late shift, I get this cold feeling down my spine, like someone's sitting alone in a corner booth somewhere, still watching, still waiting, and still writing. We don't get much foot traffic at Ellie's Diner, especially not after midnight. We're wedged between a stretch of dying pine forest and a forgotten 2-lane road that only long-haul truckers and deer seem to remember. Locals stopped coming years ago. There's a 24-hour Waffle Hut closer to town, with better lighting and less mildew in the ceiling tiles. But I like the quiet, the routine. I work the graveyard shift, 10 to 6. Just me, sometimes a line cook if it was payday week. The rest of the time, it was me, the grill, and whatever lost soul came in for coffee or hash browns. It was lonely, sure, but predictable. And predictable is good in the middle of nowhere. Until that night. The night the girl came in from the woods. It was a Wednesday in early November. Cold enough that your breath fogged up the windows, but not quite snow season yet. I remember because the jukebox kept skipping, and the heater was blowing lukewarm air, even though the manager swore he fixed it. We had one trucker sitting near the front, halfway through a meatloaf sandwich, and nodding off between bites. Then, at 2:41 a.m., the front door burst open so hard, the bell above it nearly flew off. I dropped the plate I was holding. It shattered at my feet. In the doorway stood a little girl, barefoot, wearing a torn gray dress, long tangled hair down to her shoulders. Her arms were scratched up, muddy, and raw from the cold. She was maybe 7, maybe 8. It was hard to tell in the moment. She looked like she just clawed her way through half a mile of brush, which, considering the woods across the road, might have been true. She didn't say a word, just stood there, panting hard, eyes wide with something that went beyond fear. Her gaze darted around the diner, settling on me for just a second, and I swear it was like someone hit a tuning fork in my chest. The stare was too sharp, too knowing. I rushed toward her. Hey, sweetie, you okay?" She didn't answer, just walked past me. Slow, deliberate steps across the checkered floor, leaving faint smudges of mud behind her. She climbed into booth 3, sat perfectly straight with her hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the window like she was waiting for something to follow her in. The trucker stirred, looked over confused. "What's going on?" I ignored him and grabbed a towel from under the counter. I approached the booth slowly, like she was a deer about to bolt. "It's all right. You're safe now. You want some water?" No answer. She didn't even blink. I set the towel on the table and slid it toward her. "Can you tell me your name?" Nothing. I started to reach for my phone to call the cops, but the girl suddenly raised her hand and pointed toward the window, her mouth open, but no sound came out, not even a whisper. Just that one pale finger aimed across the road toward the tree line. I looked. At first I didn't see anything, just black forest and a thin veil of fog rolling in low across the ground. Then, about 30 feet into the trees, I saw a faint shape. Human, maybe, tall and thin, standing completely still between the trees, not moving towards us, just watching. My stomach dropped. I turned back to the girl, but she had sunk down into the booth, arms wrapped tight around her knees, still staring at the window with hollow eyes. That's when I called 911. The dispatcher sounded sleepy at first, then concerned. "A child? Alone?" "Yes," I said. "She's scraped up. Looks like she's been out in the woods all night. She won't speak, and there's someone out there. I swear I saw." Then the line clicked. Just cut out. I looked at the phone, still had signal. I tried again, but it was busy. That's when the light flickered. Once, twice, the fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, and then the trucker stood up. "I'm out," he said. "I don't like this one bit." He dropped a 5 on the table and walked to the door. I yelled after him, "Wait, don't!" But he was already outside. I watched through the window as he crossed the lot, then froze halfway to his truck. His posture shifted. He took a step backward, then another, then turned and ran back to the diner, pounding on the door, yelling, "Let me in! Lock it! He's out there, right behind!" The lights went out. Just for a second, total darkness, and when they came back on, the trucker was gone. Not running, not fallen, just gone. I opened the door. Nothing but cold air and silence. No tracks, no footsteps, no sound of a truck engine. Just empty highway and thickening fog. I locked the door and bolted it. Turned back to the girl and she hadn't moved. Still staring at the window. Rocking now. Just barely. I sat across from her. My hands were shaking. "Who's out there?" I whispered. "Nothing." "What's your name?" She blinked once, then slowly reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a piece of paper, folded, water-stained and wrinkled. She pushed it across the table. I opened it. One word. Run. I backed away. She didn't look up, didn't say another word. I stayed locked in that diner until sunrise. No one came for her. When the sheriff finally arrived just after 6 a.m., the girl was gone. Booth empty. Front door still locked. Only the faint smudges on the floor and the crumpled paper in my hand proved she'd been there at all. They never found her. I gave them the description, the paper, my story. They sent search teams into the woods. Dogs, drones, even helicopters. Nothing. But the weirdest part? The sheriff told me there'd been another report like this 6 years ago. Same area, same description. A silent girl, same age, ran into a ranger's cabin from the forest at night, wouldn't speak, and disappeared by morning. No tracks, no leads, just gone. I quit the diner 2 weeks later. Moved in with my sister across the state. I don't work nights anymore, and I don't go near the woods. But sometimes, I still dream about that little girl sitting in mouth 3, mouth open, no sound, pointing towards the trees. I've worked at Harper's Diner, going on 7 years now, mostly on the overnight shift. You learn to stop being squeamish pretty fast in this job. You get numb to the grease under your fingernails, the smell of overcooked eggs, the way your hair always ends up smelling like fryer oil, no matter how many times you shower. But what I never got used to, what still makes my skin crawl just thinking about it, is the sound, the scratching. It started slow, barely noticeable, but it never stopped. It was a Monday when I first heard it, just past 1 a.m. during that dead lull where the last of the bar crowd has sobered up and the truckers are still hours from pulling off the highway. I was wiping down the counter when I heard a faint, peppery rustling from behind the wall under the coffee machine. At first, I thought it was just the ice machine groaning, or maybe a loose pipe shifting, but it happened again, and louder. Scratch, 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 pause, then scritch, scritch, scratch, like tiny claws tapping the drywall. I froze. "Rats," I muttered, and immediately regretted it. Because once you say it out loud in a diner, it becomes a thing. Health code violations, closures, inspections. I told the owner the next morning. He shrugged, didn't even look up from his crossword. "Old buildings make noise." I insisted. He said he'd have someone look at it. And he didn't. The noises just got worse. It wasn't just under the counter anymore. They moved. You could hear them skittering from wall to wall, up near the ceiling fans, under the floor, in the booths. It was like they were mapping the place inch by inch, getting bolder. Sometimes I'd hear faint chewing sounds, soft and wet, like something tearing through insulation. Then came the smells. A sour stink that clung to the air vents, like mold and something dead. I sprayed air freshener, burned coffee grounds behind the grill. Nothing helped. Then, Raymond, our overnight cook, said he found rat droppings in the dry storage closet. "I ain't touching that freezer again till you get pest control," he told the owner. He finally called someone. The guy showed up 2 days later with a clipboard and an attitude, walked around for 20 minutes, didn't even take off the vent covers. "No signs of infestation," he declared. I could have screamed. That night, the noises came back louder than ever, and I swear I heard them underneath my feet. That Friday, I was closing up around 4 a.m. The last regular had left, and I was taking out the trash when I spotted something near the grease trap out back. A rat. Or what was left of one. It was shredded, not chewed like an owl or fox would leave it, but torn apart. Bits of fur still twitching like the nerves hadn't realized the thing was dead yet. Bones cracked open. No blood. I backed away, nauseated. Then I noticed it. The hole. In the base of the brick wall just behind the dumpster. About the size of a grapefruit. Hollowed out. Edges too clean, like it had been carved. Inside, nothing but blackness. And behind that blackness, I could hear it. The scratching. But now it wasn't scattered. It was rhythmic and deliberate, like tapping in code. I didn't sleep the next day. My skin itched all over. I started Googling rat infestations, nests, signs of vermin. But none of the noises matched. It wasn't scurrying, it wasn't panic. It was purpose, like something listening. That night, I brought a flashlight. Around 2 a.m., I turned off the music and waited in silence. The hum of the soda machine faded. The only light was from the warmer. Then it started again, behind the wall by booth 7. Scratch, 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 tap, tap, tap. I held my breath and moved closer. Then I heard something I'll never forget. A voice, muffled, just 2 words. "Let me." I dropped the flashlight and stared at the wall. There was no mistaking it. The voice had come from inside the wall. A low whisper, genderless, toneless. I pressed my ear to the drywall, heart pounding. Nothing. Then, thump. A heavy, sickening thud from behind the wall, like something throwing itself against the studs. I stumbled back and ran to the kitchen, shaking, and grabbed my phone. But when I came back, the wall was quiet. I didn't bother telling the owner. What would I even say? "Hey, I think rats are speaking now." Instead, I started working with headphones in, distracting myself with prep lists and counting napkins. I stopped taking out the trash after 3 a.m. But whatever was in the walls wasn't done. It started leaving things. First, it was scraps of cloth pushed out through the air vents, dirty, faded pieces of flannel, lace stained yellow with age. Then bits of bone, tiny ones, not rat bones, human-sized, a knuckle, a tooth. I found a child's shoelace under the sink, tied in a perfect bow. One night, Raymond didn't show up. He was never late. I tried calling, but no answer. Next morning, the cops came. They found his car idling in the alley behind the diner, driver's door wide open, keys still in the ignition. No sign of him, just a smear of something brown on the handle. They asked us questions, searched the building. The owner said it was nothing unusual. I wanted to scream, check the walls, but I didn't, because part of me was terrified they would, and they'd find more. I quit 2 days later, packed up my locker, left the keys in the register. The owner tried to convince me to stay, said I was spooked by a few squirrels, that Raymond probably skipped town. But I know what I heard, what I smelled, what I saw. I still dream about the walls sometimes. I dream I'm walking the diner floor, refilling coffees, and the walls are breathing, pulsing, stretching toward me. And from behind the tiles, wires and beams, I hear that whisper again. "Let me." And sometimes I think about going back, just once, to see if they ever open that wall, to see what's still inside. People think nothing happens in a 24-hour diner after midnight, but they're wrong. Things happen. Not loud or obvious things, but quiet things. The kind of things that slip under your skin while the coffee brews and the air smells like freezer burn and old bacon grease. I worked overnights at a place called Brookside Diner, just outside a dyeing factory town. One of those two bright, silvered-paneled relics with sun-faded menus and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Obama administration. We had the same 6 customers most nights, a nurse from the hospital down the road, a long-haul trucker named Bill, a middle-aged woman who talked to herself and always ordered fries with a chocolate shake. The night shift was usually just me and whoever was in the kitchen. The manager, Cheryl, never stayed past 9 p.m. Sharp lady, early 50s, stiff bob haircut, smoked like a chimney, ran the place with an iron grip, but I didn't mind her. She paid me under the table during COVID when things got tough. I owed her. But everything changed the night I heard breathing coming from the locked office. At first, it was just little things. The office door, which was always locked after Cheryl left, would be slightly ajar when I came in some nights. Once, I found a fast food wrapper in the trash that wasn't from our place. Another time, the fridge in the back had 2 cans of off-brand soda I didn't recognize. Cheryl drank Diet Coke. These were grape something or other, with a pull tab that looked old. I asked her once, half joking, "You hiding somewhere in there?" She gave me a sharp look and said, "Don't be a smart one." Then came the night I stayed late to help close after an early shift. I was alone wiping down the pie case when I heard it, breathing, heavy and raspy from behind the office door. At first I thought maybe Cheryl had come back, or worse, someone had broken in. I crept over, heart pounding, and put my ear to the door. Silence, then a soft thump like something falling over. I knocked. "Hello?" Nothing. I turned the knob, still locked. I called Cheryl and she didn't pick up. 5 minutes later she texted, "You left already, right?" That was all. I didn't reply. The next morning I came in for my regular shift. Cheryl was in early, which was unusual. She was sitting at the counter sipping coffee like she'd been there a while. "Sorry I didn't answer last night," she said casually. "Was in bed early." I nodded slowly. She glanced up at me. "Don't linger around the office after hours, all right? Sometimes I run inventory late and leave stuff out." Inventory? At 3 a.m.? I didn't say anything, but I started to watch. 2 nights later, I forgot my jacket and came back after my shift. Lights were still on inside. I left myself in quietly. The kitchen was dark, the front empty, but the office light was on, and the door was open just an inch. I crept closer and saw him. Sitting on the office couch, bare-chested, dirty blonde hair matted with sweat, maybe late 20s, gaunt face, sunken cheeks, covered in tattoos, not artistic ones, prison-style ones, across the chest read, "No witnesses." He was holding a small radio and muttering along with it, some broadcast that sounded like it was coming from a station halfway across the country. He hadn't seen me yet. I backed away, nearly knocking over a mop bucket. I bolted. I didn't stop until I was in my car, engine running. I didn't go to work the next night. I called Cheryl instead, straight to voicemail. Then she texted, "You must have been mistaken. Don't come back tonight. We'll talk soon." I didn't sleep. I looked up her last name, dug through arrest records, mugshots, and there he was, Lucas, wanted in 3 states, aggravated assault, unlawful possession, kidnapping, and one charge that was just listed as pending murder investigation, last seen 5 years ago. Photo looked just like him, minus about 30 pounds. I was shaking. This wasn't a random squatter. This was her son, and she'd been hiding him in the office, letting him live back there, eating from our walk-in, sleeping on the couch, listening to his creepy music. And I'd been alone in the building with him more nights than I could count. I debated calling the cops, but something made me hesitate. A twisted part of me still believed Cheryl, believed in her somehow. She'd given me a job when I needed one, treated me okay. Maybe she didn't know what he'd done. Then I got another text from a number I didn't know. "Why were you watching me?" No name, no punctuation. I nearly dropped the phone, blocked the number immediately. Then another message from a different number. "Your address is easy to find." That's when I went to the police. Cops raided the diner 2 days later. Found the office empty, mattress rolled up in the back, drawers cleaned out, nothing left behind but a book with scribbled notes in the margins, one yellow sticky note on the wall. "Sorry, Mom." They never caught him. Cheryl disappeared that same day, cleared out her bank account, left behind her keys and a single employee check on the counter. Mine. Brookside Diner closed, for good, a month later. Someone brought in tried to rebrand it, but the locals never came back. I still drive past it sometimes. It's boarded up now, windows dusted over, but sometimes I swear I see movement in the dark behind the glass. Just a flicker, just a shadow, but I always check my rearview mirror just in case, because I know what Lucas looked like when he stared through that crack in the office door, and I know what kind of people can live among us for years, fed, protected, and hidden in plain sight, right behind the manager's door. They always say nothing good happens after midnight, and they're right. I worked the overnight shift at Sally's Diner off 150 for years now, and there's one thing I've learned. It's this: you don't ask too many questions. Not when a guy walks in with bloody knuckles, not when someone pays with a $100 bill at 3 a.m. and doesn't wait for change, and especially not when someone sits in the far booth facing the window and doesn't order a thing. You just pour the coffee, wipe the counter, and mind your business. That philosophy got me through a lot, until the night I broke my rule. It was a Tuesday just past 1 a.m. I was alone. Ricky, the line cook, had called in again. Flu, which meant I was flying solo until dawn. Not unusual. We didn't get much foot traffic on a weekday anyway. A few long-haul truckers, sometimes a drunk couple fresh out of a fight, but mostly it was me, the buzz of the lights, and the quiet hum of the soda machine. I was halfway through restocking the sugar caddies when the bell above the door jingled. He slept in slow, thin, pale, wearing a dirty gray suit and a tan coat soaked to hem. We hadn't had rain in a week, but he looked like he'd crawled out of a storm. His shoes squelched with every step. He didn't look at me, just walked straight to the booth in the back corner and sat down, arms folded. No eye contact, no menu. Just sat there like he was waiting for something, or someone. I waited a minute, then grabbed a menu and walked over. "Evening," I said. "What can I get for you?" He didn't look up. "Coffee," he muttered. I nodded and left the menu on the table. There was something about his voice, flat and mechanical, like he hadn't spoken in a long time and forgotten how emotion worked. I poured his coffee and set it on the table. He didn't thank me, didn't touch the cup, just stared out the window like something was out there. A half hour passed, still no other customers, still no sip from his coffee. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help it. His hand sat flat on the table, long, pale fingers that looked too clean for the rest of him. His nails were spotless, not clean and shiny, like they'd been polished. He didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't even blink as far as I could tell. I started getting nervous. Something about the way he stayed still that was wrong. People shifted, scratched, adjusted. This guy might as well have been a mannequin. I cleared my throat and walked over again. "You good on that coffee?" Nothing. "Sir?" His head turned so slightly. Not toward me, toward the window. Then he whispered, "She's late." That's when I should have walked away. Should have gone back behind the counter, pretended to be on the phone, or called the cops just to be safe. But I didn't. Something in me, curiosity, boredom, maybe just stupidity, made me ask, "Who's late?" He smiled just a little. Not warm, not friendly. The kind of smile you see on someone who already knows the punchline to a joke you haven't heard yet. "My sister." I glanced outside. Empty parking lot. The woods past the road looked like a black wall. No headlights. "Want me to call someone for you?" "She's already coming," he said, like it was a fact. Just lost, again. Always gets lost. I walked away. The next 30 minutes were a slow crawl of tension. I tried to focus on small things, cleaning menus, counting out the till, wiping the ketchup bottles, but I could feel his presence like heat behind my back, still unmoving, still staring out the window. At 2:12 a.m. the lights flickered. Once, then again. The fluorescents buzzed like they were straining. That's when he finally touched the coffee, picked it up slowly, held it an inch from his lips. Then he said, "She hates bright places." The lights above booth 12 went out. Just those. The rest of the diner stayed lit. He sat in the darkness, sipping his coffee, eyes still locked on the blackness outside. I reached under the counter slowly and flicked the light breaker. Nothing changed. I checked the bulb and it was fine. Breaker box was intact. I was alone, I knew it, but I didn't feel like I was. Then I heard it, a thud against the window. Not glass shattering, just something soft and wet. I turned, and he was still there, still calm, still smiling. "She's here," he said. I walked toward the window cautiously. There was a handprint, small and delicate, pressed against the glass from outside, and then another, higher, like someone was climbing. I backed up fast, ran to the door, flipped the lock, yanked the blind shut. "Don't do that," the man said. I spun. Who are you? What is this?" He tilted his head. "Just the one who waits." I called the police. Tried to. The line was dead. My cell had no signal. The man stood slowly finally, and I noticed he was barefoot. The carpet where he'd been sitting was damp, and now the office door behind me clicked shut. I hadn't left it open. He started walking toward the front. "I told her to stay in the woods," he said. "Told her not to come here. Not like this." Something pounded against the back exit, then the freezer door, then the vents started whining like something was crawling inside them. I froze. The man reached the front door, unlocked it, and opened it slowly. The wind howled in, freezing and bitter. He stepped outside, looked at the woods, and said, "She's your problem now." Then he walked into the trees. I stood there shaking for a long time. No cops came. No one drove by. Eventually the lights came back on. I opened the office. Nothing inside, no damage. Just a small puddle on the floor that smelled like mold and iron. I quit that night. Haven't worked a night shift since. Sometimes, just sometimes, I drive past Sally's Diner on my way home from the bar, and I always check the windows, because once, I swear I saw 2 handprints pressed against the glass, and a pale face just behind them, smiling. I've always liked the night shift. People say it's the dead shift, but I never minded the quiet. Less rush, fewer questions, and you get to know the kinds of folks most of the world forgets about. Truckers and their 6 cup of coffee, women running from bad husbands, loners with strange tattoos who tip too well. Everyone's got a story out here. I work the graveyard at Pine's Diner, a squat, metal-paneled building halfway between nowhere and never coming back, surrounded by pine woods thick enough to blot out the moon. It's the last real stop before the state line. It's also the kind of place people stumble into when they don't want to be found, but nothing ever rattled me like the night she ran in. It was just past 2:30 on a Wednesday in late October, a cold one, breath fogging, with frost already creeping across the corners of the window panes. I was alone, up front. The cook had gone out back to smoke. We had no customers, no music playing, just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft ticking of the wall clock above the pie case. Then I heard the slam. The door burst open so hard it made the bell snap right off its hook. It clattered across the tiles and spun in a crooked circle at my feet. She ran in barefoot, clothes torn, face scratched and bloody, dark hair matted to her forehead with sweat. Her eyes, wide, frenzied, full of terror, locked on mine. I froze. She looked like she'd been running for miles. I opened my mouth to say something, maybe, "Are you okay?" But she sprinted behind the counter and dropped to the floor, wedging herself beneath the register, hugging her knees to her chest. I walked around slowly, hands raised. Hey, you're okay now. You're safe. What happened?" She didn't speak. She just shook her head violently and whispered, "Don't let them in, please." I crouched beside her, trying to stay calm even though my pulse was hammering in my ears. Who's after you?" Her lips trembled. "The ones in white. From the woods, they're watching." I thought maybe she was on something. Whatever. But something about her didn't fit that profile. Her eyes were too clear. Her panic too real. I grabbed a blanket from the back, one we kept for emergencies, and wrapped it around her. She flinched when I touched her, then leaned into the warmth like it was the first safe thing she'd felt in hours. "I'm calling 911, I said. "No," she hissed. "They won't make it in time. They never do." That made my stomach turn. "What do you mean?" "They know the routes, the roads. They've blocked them before." I made the call anyway. The dispatcher promised someone would be there within 15 minutes. I locked the doors, turned off the neon signs, and pulled the blinds. The cook came back in and nearly dropped his cigarette when he saw the girl. "Where did she come from?" "She said someone's chasing her out from the woods." He stared out through the window just towards the tree line. The diner was surrounded on 3 sides by the forest, thick pines, no houses for miles, no trailheads. He didn't come out those woods by accident. I peeked through a slit in the blinds. For a moment, I didn't see anything. Then movement. 3 figures, dressed in white robes, walking along the shoulder of the road, slow and steady, like they had nowhere to be. Their faces were shadowed by hoods, barefoot, even in the frost. They weren't in a hurry, because they knew where she was. I locked the kitchen door. The cook grabbed the axe from the firewall. The girl, her name I later learned was Clara, sat under the counter and didn't blink. Like if she even moved an inch, they'd sense it. I whispered, "How many are there?" She shook her head. "Too many, I don't know. They're not all human anymore." "What?" She looked at me. "They don't sleep. They don't stop. I escaped during the night chance. There was a tunnel under the barn. I ran until I saw lights." "Where is this place?" She hesitated. "East Hollow, about 6 miles into the woods. No roads lead there. They don't want people to know." I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. East Hollow. I'd heard of it. A local rumor, more like a ghost story. Some off-grid community that broke off from a religious sect back in the 70s. Wacko-style installation. Lots of whispers, ritual fasting, arranged marriages, disappearances, but nothing proven. Until now. There was a soft knock at the door. Then another. No pounding, no yelling. Just knocking. Steady and rhythmic. Like a code. I crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. One of them stood there, still. Head tilted slightly to the left. Right hand raised to knock again. The hood didn't move. The face beneath it was in total shadow. He knocked again. 3 slow taps. I stepped back. The air felt wrong. Too still. My lungs felt tight, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. Then the knocking stopped. And then silence. The cook whispered, "They're not leaving, are they?" I shook my head. We turned off every light. Sat in the dark with the girl, waited for the sound of sirens. But they didn't come. 30 minutes passed, then a car finally pulled up. Floodlights, a cruiser. I nearly cried when I saw it. The deputies came in, guns drawn, confused and cautious. Clara wouldn't speak to them. She just clung to my arm, trembling. They found nothing in the woods. No footprints, no robes, no cult. But later, one of the deputies told me the strange thing was someone had laid nails across the road on the way in. Long, rusted, sharpened like spikes. Homemade car stops, designed to blow tires. Someone didn't want help to arrive. Clara went into protective custody. She finally gave a statement a week later. Said she'd been born in the cult, raised in East Hollow, and hadn't seen a car or power line until she was 16. She escaped when she realized her wedding was supposed to be to a man in his 60s who'd taken 3 other wives before her. She said people who tried to leave were punished, vanished, returned to the trees. Most didn't try. She did, and she made it. The FBI raided the forest months later and found nothing. No buildings, no sign of a compound. Just old animal bones and traces of burned wood deep beneath the soil, like something had been erased. But I know what I saw. I know what she ran from. And I know what was standing outside that diner door knocking politely, like they'd done it before, like they'd do it again. I don't work nights anymore, and I never, ever drive past pines without looking at the tree line, because I swear, some nights I still see white robes behind the trunks, just waiting.